Hello. Today I will be talking about a modern example of decolonization involving the Yurok tribe and the Blue Creek landback effort in Northern California. This example shows how native nations today are reclaiming control over their land, protecting their environments, and revitalizing their cultures. The project was completed in 2025 and represents one of the largest landback efforts in California history. But first, before discussing the example, it's important to understand what exactly decolonization means. Decolonization refers to efforts by indigenous communities to restore control over their lands, cultures, and political systems after centuries of colonization. Colonization often involved the seizure of land, the suppression of indigenous culture, and the loss of political autonomy. Modern decolonization efforts can include land back movements, cultural revitalization, language restoration, and legal actions that strengthen tribal sovereignty. The example I chose was the Blue Creek Land Back movement, which is when in 2025 about 47,000 acres of ancestral land was returned to the tribe. The land is located along the Blue Creek and Klamath River in Northern California. It is now managed as the Blue Creek Salmon Sanctuary and Yurok Tribal Community Forest. This project is considered the largest land back conservation deal in California's history. The reason why this is so important to the Yurok people is because the Blue Creek is a extremely vital ecosystem. It provides cold, clean water that helps salmon survive and migrate through the Klamath River system. Salmon are central to the Yurok tribe's culture, diet, and ceremonies. Because of this, protecting Blue Creek is not only an environmental issue, but also a cultural one. Yurok people have traditionally lived in more than 50 villages along the Klamath River. Their culture has always been closely connected to the river, fishing, and the surrounding environment. However, when the United States expanded westward, the government created the Yurok Reservation in 1855. This drastically reduced the amount of land the Yurok people had access to and disrupted their traditional way of life. Colonization had major impacts on the Yurok people. Much of their land was taken or controlled by outside governments and private companies. Logging and other industries damaged important ecosystems. These changes disrupted the long running fishing practices, religious ceremonies, and the land stewardship that had existed for plenty of generations. Why does this land back effort matter? And how did this land back effort come about? The Blue Creek land back effort did not happen overnight. It began around 2009 when conservation groups started working to purchase land from a logging company. Over time, the land was transferred back to the Yurok tribe in several phases. The final transfer was completed in 2025, returning the land to tribal control. This project is a clear example of decolonization because it restores indigenous sovereignty. Sovereignty means that native nations have the powers to politically govern themselves and make huge decisions regarding their lands. With the return of the Blue Creek, the Yurok tribe now has the ability to manage the land based on their own beliefs and customs. The Yurok tribe plans to manage the land and restore salmon habitats, protect the forest, and support our nation's wildlife. Indigenous land management practices often focus on long term sustainability and environmental imbalance. By protecting this land, the tribe is also helping restore the natural ecosystem of the region. The return to the land also supports cultural revitalization. When tribes regain access to traditional lands, it allows them to continue important cultural practices such as fishing, ceremonies, and teaching younger generations about their heritage. Land restoration helps strengthen cultural identity and community connections. This project also challenges the myth that Native Americans only exist in the past. Native nations continue to be active politically and culturally throughout communities today. Efforts like the Blue Creek Landback movement show how indigenous communities are leading environmental restoration and continuing to practice their sovereignty. Personally, I decided to choose this topic because it shows really well how decolonization is not just a theory but something that is actively happening in our world today. The Landback movement demonstrates how Native nations can reclaim their land, restore cultural connections, while also protecting the environment. This connects to materials that we've learned about in class, such as danger of a single story, because Adichie discusses in her TED Talk that when you only listen to one narrative or label regarding somebody, it creates a misunderstanding. With Native Americans, people generally believe Generally believe them and their culture are a thing in the past and that it permanently died after colonization, when in reality, the native nations continue to remain active. This also connects to the reading Education Elementary School Children on the Perpetuation of Genocide by Nicole Myers Lim, because both events contradicts many of the myths being brought upon by the native people, with Lim talking about how many natives resisted the building of the missions and showed extreme integrity, just like how the native people are present day showing their extreme leadership and integrity when making attempts to restore their land and what was theirs. Finally, this also relates to Module Two's lecture regarding the doctrine of discovery, cult of the covenant, and culture of conquest. Because when our government enacted the Yurok reservation, they felt they had the privilege to do so, just like how colonists believed that they had the right to seize whatever land they wanted when they first settled here. Ultimately, this project helped change my understanding of Native American communities as a whole, and that Indigenous history is not only about loss or the past, but rather events that are still ongoing. Letting people know that Native nations continue to slowly rebuild their cultures and reclaim what was once theirs with land restoration, playing a major role in reviving traditions, ecosystems, and personal agency.